Timothy said it a different way. And, I mean, not Timothy, Paul to Timothy. And this really applies to Achan's problem, Israel's problem, and our problem. Many of us. He said this, but godliness actually is a means of great gain when accompanied by contentment. For we have brought nothing into the world, so we cannot take anything out of it either. If we have food and covering, with these we shall be content. But those who want to get rich fall into temptation and the trap, and many foolish and harmful desires which plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all sorts of evil. And some, by longing for it, have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. That love of money, that is spiritual infidelity toward God. That desire, that wanting to be rich. Now, I'm not saying that rich people don't know God. And it kind of sounds like that, but that's not what I'm saying. So if you're rich, I am not talking about you. I'm sorry, I know it applies to most of you. I thought that'd get a good laugh. Yeah, we're good. Well, but this is what happened. And you know, you see Christians all the time wanting to get rich. People want to get rich. I know more people that go to the casino. I have people, not none of you, nobody in the church, but people I know, neighbors and friends, we talk a lot. And they go to the casino. And my family, my cousins, they go to the casino all the time. Guy next door to me told me that he went to the casino, won a bunch of money, put him in a different tax bracket. He had to pay so much taxes. It'd been better if he'd never gone at all. And I can't remember how much it was. I know my cousin went one year, this was probably 4, 5, 6 years ago, and she won $30,000 that year. And of course, I know people that lose all kinds of money as well. I know one guy that, this was years and years ago in another state, who was so addicted to gambling that he stole his mother's credit cards and ran them up to tens of thousands of dollars. And now she was trying to pay that debt back because he had a gambling addiction and wanted to gamble. Well, he loved money. That's what's wrong. People want money. I don't go to the casinos. I don't know if any of you do. And if I did, I would say hi to you if I saw you. But I'm just kidding. I'd say hi, Linda. I'd wave. At least wave at you.
You saw me, huh?
You know, my problem, if I went to the casino and won a whole bunch of money, I couldn't brag on it here. You know? No, I have never, I don't believe in gambling because the main thing is, you know, you work hard for money. You don't want to go give it away to somebody just for, and that's what I do. I'd be giving it to them. Because I'd lose every time, I guarantee it. I know I would. But you see, this was Achan's problem. He saw these things that were devoted to destruction. Now, you probably have read the story, what he did. He took things, and then he coveted these things, and then he what? He took them. Now, isn't that the basic problem of sin? Think about Eve for a moment. Genesis 3:6. We're all familiar with this story, but listen to this. It says, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, so she saw it, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, so she coveted this. She took some of its fruit and ate. So she saw it, she coveted, she took it. And then she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. All she had to do was say, honey, eat this, and he did it. Good husband.
Yes.
Exactly. No, same thing. They both see it. And think about David. I know I talked about David last week, but listen to David in 2 Samuel 11, 2 through 4. It says, now at evening, David got up from his bed, walked around the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing. And the woman was very beautiful in appearance. So David sent servants and inquired about the woman. So now he's coveting this woman. And someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? Then David sent messengers and had her brought. And when she came to him, he slept with her. So he took her as well. And when he had purified herself from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. So you see, they see it, they covet, they took. What about us? You know, we see things and we think, boy, I'd like to have that. And then if we take those things, and we're no different. And I'm not talking about seeing something at a store and then taking it. I'm talking about our hearts, and we could do the same thing, and we do the same thing. Well, the second truth. First, Israel was unfaithful. Second truth is that the Lord held all of Israel accountable for the sin of Achan, for one man. There was sin. And what did he do? Achan was directly disobedient to God. You say, well, I know other people there sinned. And you're right. The other people there sinned too. But he is the only one that directly disobeyed what God said. Here's what God said in Joshua 6:17. It says, but the city shall be designated for destruction. And remember last week we said that everything was to be destroyed. It said that in it and everything that's in it belongs to the Lord. Only Rahab the prostitute, all who are with her in the house shall live, because she hid the messengers. But as for you, only keep yourself from the things designated for destruction, so that you do not covet them. You see, he saw and coveted, and take some of the designated things. He saw, he coveted, he took. And turn the camp of Israel into something designated for destruction, and bring disaster on it. But all the silver and gold, the articles of bronze, iron, are holy to God, to the Lord, and they shall go into the treasury of the Lord. So, they were told to do the same thing. These things belong to God. Destroy everything, put these in the treasury of God. And what did Achan do? He saw it, he coveted, he took. Have you ever experienced or seen a child who did something after the child was told not to do it? I hear y'all laughing. Apparently you have. You're probably that child. But I have seen children, and you say, don't touch that. They look right at you and touch it. Or don't do that. They look right at you. We even see fifth graders who do the same thing. I will tell them, don't do whatever it is, and they just turn right around and do it anyway. That is directly disobeying the authority. I mean, directly. Well, that is exactly what this man did. He disobeyed. And God taught them a lesson through this. First, God saw the nation as a unit. And every believer's sin affected the nation. We see this in the New Testament. Remember the Apostle Paul in the book of 1 Corinthians. You remember this story. It says that it's actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and sexual immorality of such a kind as does not exist among the Gentiles, namely that someone has his father's wife. You have become arrogant and have not mourned instead, so that the one who had done this deed would be removed from your midst. So a man in the church at Corinth was having an affair with his, what most commentators would say, his stepmother. And that was forbidden. Leviticus chapter 20 verse 11, and they probably, I'm sure they knew this, says that both, when that happens, would be put to death. And yet the Corinthians were just allowing it to happen. And then Paul goes on, for I on my part, though absent in the body but present in spirit, have already judged him who has committed this, as though I were present. He said, I've decided to turn such a person over to Satan for the destruction of the flesh. And then he comes down, you find the right place. I'll tell you what, I better read the whole thing. Destruction of the body, so that the spirit may be saved on the day of the Lord. Your boasting's not good. Do you not know that a little leaven leavens a whole lump of dough? Clean out the old leaven, so that you may be a new lump, just as you are in fact unleavened, for Christ our Passover has been sacrificed. Let's celebrate the feast, not with old leaven, not with the leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And then Paul tells them, remove the evil person from yourselves. So what Paul is saying is that this one little bit of yeast leavens the entire batch. If you're making bread, you put a little bit in it. You can't pull part of that dough out after you mix it together. And he's saying that this one person's sin is affecting the entire church. Have you ever seen one person in a church affect the entire church with a bad attitude? Or does the church just say, they'll be fine? I've seen that happen a lot. Have you ever heard, and I know you've heard this expression, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I've seen churches with hundreds of people, and one person can disrupt the entire fellowship. I was in a church of a couple of hundred, and about 5 or 6 people, like 2 families, and they were kin too. It wasn't Arkansas, they were kin. Sorry, Paul. But they disrupted the whole church because something happened they didn't like against one of the staff people. It wasn't me, another staff person. And they didn't like it. And they disrupted the church for months. For months because of it. So one thing in the church can affect the entire body. Now, in the nation of Israel, that's what Paul's saying. Achan's sin affected the entire nation of Israel. The third truth that we see is that nothing escapes God. Sin never escapes God. Achan thought he was going to get away with this. What did he do? I know we haven't read it yet, but what did he do with the things he took? Anybody remember? He buried them. Hid them under his tent. Buried them under there. Now, do you think his spouse, his family, you think everybody lived there knew about it? Sure. I mean, how do you go and dig a hole and bury stuff without everybody knowing about it? So no doubt they did. But you know, even if they didn't, sin doesn't escape God. God knows our sin. God sees our sin. We can't hide our sin. Psalm 139 verse 1 through 6 says, Lord, you've searched me and you've known me. You know when I sit down, when I get up. You understand my thought from far away. You scrutinize my path, my lying down. You're acquainted with all my ways. Even before there's a word on my tongue, behold, Lord, you know it all. You've encircled me behind and in front, placed your hand upon me. Can you imagine? God knows every word in your mouth before you even say it. He knows every thought in your heart, every thought in your mind before you think it. How do you get away with sin? We can't. God, in His omniscience, I can't even say it. You know what I'm trying to say? Omniscience. I've never tripped on that word in my life. Omniscience. Knows. Numbers 32:23 says, but if you do not do so, behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Galatians 6:7-8 says, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. For whatever a person sows, this he will also reap. So in other words, God knows your heart, doesn't He? You know, that's a scary thought. Think about it for a moment. Everything you think before you think it, God knows it. Those things that you're going to be doing in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, God knows it. Yeah, that's kind of scary. To think that God knows everything. But He does. And people may wonder, well, how can He know what I'm going to think? Well, He does. It reminded me of a movie that came out some years ago, starring Tom Cruise. It was about these two, I think they were twins or something, who could foresee the future. This is set in the future, science fiction. And so they would arrest people for crimes they have yet to commit. Anybody saw that movie?
Minority Report.
Thank you. Is that it? It's a good movie. Before they even committed the crime, they would go arrest them to keep them from committing the crime. Now that doesn't seem very fair, does it? If you haven't seen it, it's a good movie, isn't it, Paul? Mm-hmm. Well, he gets arrested. He's a cop that arrests people. He gets arrested for something he hasn't even done yet. Now, I'm not going to tell you more than that. Of course, we know it's a setup. But anyway, it's a good movie. But with God, it's truth. He already knows. He already knows. So nothing we do. I mean, don't even try to get away with it because you can't. So what do we do? Which leads us to the fourth truth. God doesn't overlook sin. He knows it, and He doesn't overlook it. He didn't overlook Achan's sin. His sin was what? Was greed? Would you say his sin was greed? Yep, he wanted something. Was it selfishness? Was it rebellion against God? God said, don't do this. He did it anyway. It says, therefore, in verse 1, the anger of the Lord burned against the sons of Israel. How serious is rebellion against God? When God says don't do it, and we do it anyway, that is a form of rebellion, isn't it? How serious is rebellion? What do you do when your kids, you tell them don't, and they do? Okay, maybe I shouldn't have asked. 1 Samuel 15:23 says, for rebellion is as reprehensible as a sin of divination. Do you know what that is? The occult. Fortune telling. What I believe some versions will call it soothsaying. Remember that? I always wonder what that was when I was young. But today, we saw those things then, but today we still see this kind of stuff, don't we? Let me give you some things. Tarot cards. You know what those are? I was driving down 169 one day, and I saw a billboard just a month or so ago, and it said the Long Island, I think it's Long Island or something like that, medium. You know what a medium is? Someone you go to, and they put you in touch with dead people, basically. That was on the billboard. She was coming to the Hard Rock or somewhere to do that. And people eat that stuff up. They love it for whatever reason. Deuteronomy 18:10 says, there shall not be found among you anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens. It starts saying omens. You remember in the New Testament, Acts chapter 16, verse 16, Luke, Paul, and Silas were in Philippi, and it says, we were met by a slave girl who had the spirit and brought her owners much gain by fortune telling. So what did Paul do? Paul cast a demon out of her. And then what happened? Ran them out of town. They got mad at them because that was their money. They freed her from the demons and they took away their livelihood. You see, this in any form is sin. Today, all you have to do, I think we just kind of get used to it. We see it on TV. Like I say, we see it on a billboard, fortune telling, astrology, witchcraft, tarot cards. When I was teaching in Muskogee years ago, one little girl brought some of her mother's tarot cards to school. She was a medium, and she used those cards, and she had a place in town that you could go and give her money, and she would tell you everything about you, or whatever. You know what those are, right? I mean, you've seen. And that's not that uncommon. Ouija boards. Wicca. Everybody know what Wicca is? I have a friend on Facebook, a girl I went to high school with, and I see her post from time to time, and I've talked to her a couple of times. But she always posts these things, and I never really look at them. But it's a blog from someone called the Oogie Boogie Witch. And she describes herself on this blog as celebrating the spiritual paths connected to pagans, witches, and Wiccans, honoring witchcraft, healing, and nature, and all that empowers the soul. You see, this sort of stuff happens. The spiritual world, even if somebody pretends to be playing with it, it's real. And it's not always nice. God is spirit. Angels are spirit. Demons are spirit. Well, we see, now I kind of got sidetracked there, but what the point is that God doesn't overlook sin. Sin is going to be dealt with. And in this chapter, God deals with Achan's sin. We're going to find out exactly what he did in just a moment. He deals with sin. So that leads us to the question, how does he do that? What does God do when someone sins? Well, automatically our mind goes to what? To 1 John, doesn't it? That's where we want to go. But you know what? It should go somewhere else first. Proverbs 28:13 says, he who conceals his wrongdoing will not prosper, but one who confesses and abandons them will find compassion. Well, we go back to Achan and back to that story. Achan didn't confess to God. What happened to him? They had to bring him out, didn't they? It says in verse 14 and 15, so in the morning you shall come forward by your tribes. This is what God told Joshua to tell the people. And it shall be that the tribe which the Lord selects by lot shall come forward by families, and the family which the Lord selects shall come forward by households, and the household which the Lord selects shall come forward man to man. And it shall be that the one who is selected with things designated for destruction shall be burned with fire. This is the punishment. He and all that belongs to him, because he has violated the covenant of the Lord, and because he has committed a disgraceful thing in Israel. So God has already said, this is what's going to happen. Now, why did Achan have confessed before? Well, we don't know. But I find it interesting that it says that the tribe that God selects by lot. How many of you know what a lot is? New Testament, we see the guys at the cross playing, remember, by lot, wagering. But what is a lot? Everything I read about it, I've never really studied it. I thought, I want to read a little about this. I want to figure out what this is, because how could they use this to find Achan, how to find the person that did this reprehensible act? Well, the best I could find is that one commentator said that they really don't know much about it. But it was some kind of sticks or stones or something. And I found it interesting. They said the closest modern practice would be flipping a coin. I mean, I don't want to think, okay, say I'm seeking God's will. And say that, I'm trying to think of something I really want to seek God on to make sure it's his will. What would be a good example? I can't even think of anything. I can think of one, but I better not use that one. But let's say that, say you're wanting to start a new job, okay? Leave a job, start a new job. So you say, okay, God, or maybe you want to propose. And you think, okay, do I do this? So you flip a coin. Heads, I go. Tails, I stay. Heads, I ask her. Tails, I don't. That's kind of what it was like. Would you put God's will, your hands in that to determine God's will for your life? I mean, today we wouldn't. Why? Because we have the Spirit of God dwelling within us. We have the Holy Spirit who guides us, don't we? But that is sort of what it was like. And I found it very interesting that they would do that. In fact, it's mentioned 70 times in the Old Testament, 7 in the New Testament. One of the most well-known times is when they chose a new apostle. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. That's in, where's that at? I don't have that written down.
Acts.
Yeah, it's in Acts. So Acts, I do have it written down, 126. Who would replace Judas? Do it by lots. They did it on the ship. Remember Jonah chapter 1 verse 7 on who was responsible and brought God's wrath on their ship. Here's what it says. And each man said to his mate, come on, let's cast lots so we may find out on whose account this catastrophe is struck. So they cast lots and the lot fell on Jonah. I just find that, I need to read that more. I find that interesting. But anyway, today we have the Word of God that guides us. We have the Spirit of God who guides us. We have prayer. We don't have to question or wonder, because God himself, I believe, will guide us in these decisions that we have to make if we will listen. I think that's a key, that we need to listen. Well, let's go back to Joshua. Joshua 7 verse 16 says, so Joshua got up early in the morning and brought Israel forward by tribes. And the tribe of Judah was selected. So he brought the family of Judah forward. He selected the family of the Zerahites. He brought the family of the Zerahites forward man to man, man by man, and Zabdi was selected. And he brought his household forward man by man, and Achan, son of Carmi, son of Zabdi, son of Zerah from the tribe of Judah, was selected. Then Joshua said to Achan, my son, I implore you to give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and give praise to him, and tell me what you have done. Do not hide it from me. You see, your sin will find you out. So he answered Joshua. He said, truly I have sinned against the Lord, the God of Israel. And this is what I did. In other words, I got caught. So I might as well fess up. That's what he did. He said, when I saw the spoils among the spoils, a beautiful robe from Shinar, 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold, 50 shekels in weight, then I wanted them. I saw, I coveted, I wanted them, and I took them. And behold, they're hidden in the ground inside my tent with the silver underneath. So Joshua sent messengers. They ran to the tent. Behold, it was hidden in the tent with the silver underneath. They took them from inside the tent, brought them to Joshua and all the sons of Israel, and they laid them out before the Lord. Then Joshua and all Israel with him took Achan the son of Zerah, the silver, the robe, the bar of gold, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, his tent, and all that belonged to him, brought them up to the valley of Achor. And Joshua said, why have you brought disaster on us? The Lord will bring disaster on you this day. And all Israel stoned them with stones, and they burned them with fire after they had stoned them with stones. All of his sheep, his donkeys, his oxen, his children, no doubt grandchildren as well, his entire family. Then they erected a heap of large stones that stands to this day. You see, God will deal with sin in our lives. You think, oh my goodness, that's harsh. Well, we turn to the book of Hebrews, and we see how God deals with sin today with us. God still deals with sin. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 4, it says, if you're in your struggle against sin, you have not resisted to the point of shedding your blood. Have you completely forgotten this word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses a son? It says, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastens everyone he accepts as his son. Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you're not disciplined, everybody undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. See, sin is against the character of God. When a child disobeys, especially when they say, look you right in the eye and go do whatever you tell them not to do anyway. If you're like me, that irked me more than anything. That willful disobedience. And it's happened. That I saw my children as a father. Yes, I disciplined my children. Why? Because I wanted to correct behavior. Have you ever seen a child who was never or even an adult who was never disciplined as a child? Or a teenager who's not disciplined as a child? They think they can do anything they want to do. And then when they get arrested for doing something illegal, they say life is not fair. You know, at school, we have kids, sometimes they'll get in a fight. I've had this happen before. And I will tell them, you realize that if you were an adult and you hit a person like that you would go to jail. Because that's true. If you just walk up to somebody on the playground of adulthood at work and hit them upside the head, you're going to jail. Am I right? Right. And I would tell the children that. You know, because you're a child, you're not, but you can't do this. This is not how we behave. Well, Achan failed to confess. His whole family was stoned, which just proved one thing: God is serious about sin. Again, today we have the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God convicts us of sin. John 16:8 says, when he comes, he'll convict the world regarding sin. And how does God deal with sin in our lives? We could spend a lot of time here, but we do go to 1 John 1:8.